Sales teams rarely miss the number all at once. They drift into it. A deal sleeps here, a standard gets lower there, forecast confidence starts to fade, and execution gets weaker long before the numbers make it obvious. And too often, leaders look at miss the quota as a rep problem. But what if this is actually something deeper? What if the real issue is not just what sellers are doing in the field, but what leadership is allowing, tolerating, or failing to see early enough? And this is exactly what I want to unpack today, because behind every missed forecast, there is usually more than a pipeline problem. There is a real leadership gap. So in this episode, we're going to talk about execution drift, forecast erosion, and what sales leaders need to notice before the quarter gets away from them. And I'm very glad to have Stephen Rosen here with me today. Stephen, thank you for joining the show, and it's great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to do the show, and what a great introduction. I think I've heard those words before, and they're beautiful words because they're true.
Yeah, now we are going to, dive deep into this. Stephen, before we start, just a quick introduction about yourself, what you've done in the past and what you do now. You have a broad experience, so whatever you feel and you want to add, you're welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna tell a long story short, but I've been in sales and sales leadership for 30 years. I know it's hard to believe, given I'm only 26, but I started as a retail sales rep, and in the pharmaceutical industry, that's kind of the lowest of the low. And within 7 years, I ran 3 divisions as VP of Sales and Marketing. So I was always a go-to guy. And I'll talk about, and I was never trained for any of my jobs. So I did that for 10 years, went to another company as VP of Sales, and my team tripled sales over the 3 years I was there. And then I had enough with industry. I was pretty old. I was about 40. And I thought, you know what, this is not a life for me. And I decided to start my own business. It's been various iterations. And for the last, I've been in business for over 23 years. For the last 15 years, I have focused solely on sales leadership because I believe sales leaders are the most important people to drive performance in sales organizations, and that they lack training, they lack support. There's an expectation that they know what they're doing. And that's not usually the truth. I'm going to talk about focused a little bit, but this has been a book in the makings for over 20 years. When I first started my business, I started to blog because everybody else was blogging. And many of the articles I wrote were about focus and the importance of focus. So I've always believed in focus. And this has a slightly, I guess, evolved angle as I've been out helping sales leaders. But to me, that's one of the most important factors for success.
Thank you, Stephen. And let's go straight to the reason why I reached out to you, because Focused is out, your new book. And I really would like to know more than the contents of the book, because there are a few topics that I would like to ask you about. More about why did you decide to release the book now when you've been in, let's say, the kind of leadership, sales leadership and sales leadership consulting world for the last 20 plus years?
That's a good question. And sometimes I joke that I'm a late bloomer. It's never too late. I think I've seen the same pattern repeating itself over and over again, where managers who, I help them become better coaches, better sales leaders, better at managing performance. And I had a group that I ran them through my training, and then I ran them through my reinforcement, which was coaching. And what I realized is they kept telling me they're too busy to coach. And I've seen this over and over again. And it drives me nuts, though, because coaching is the number one factor that sales leaders can do to drive performance. There's no argument about that. But what I realize is there's a pattern that's going on. And it's taken me 23 years to figure out what the problem is, to be honest with you, because I thought, okay, I used to train and then I coached, and I wouldn't do training without coaching. That was my big thing. And then I realized, even though I reinforced for 3 to 6 months, unless there's an enforcement arm, and that's kind of the key epiphany that I had, as to the missing piece, the missing link to why even companies that invest in coaching, invest in training, still have challenges. So it was, I guess it hit me on the head a few times. And I realized that organizations that I worked with, where the leader got up and said, whatever Stephen has taught us in the last 2 days or whatever we've trained on, we're going to implement. And that was an epiphany. And we realized, a lot of the managers said to me, Stephen, would love to do what you taught us, but we're too busy. And what I realized is they're doing, I don't want to use my French word, but they're doing a lot of SHIT, right? I use the word caca, but they spend a lot of time doing things that don't move the needle. And to me, we built a task force saying, let's get rid of these tasks that have no impact on revenue, and let's focus on coaching. Let's find time. If we don't have time, we're doing some things wrong. And that was, I guess, for me, it was a epiphany. It's like, okay, these people are not focused. And what's the reason why? It's not because they lack talent. Sometimes it's not because they lack training, or that they lack the effort. There's a system problem here. And it was like, okay, maybe I can put that down to paper.
Thank you. And let's go straight into my favorite subject of your book. I mean, I have no doubts, but I think that the reason is I'm a practitioner, I'm a sales guy, so I can see the thing from, the other perspective. And the strong idea I'm referring to in your book, In Focused, is that you say something that most sales leaders just don't want to hear. That missing quota isn't a rep problem, it's a leadership problem. So, two questions for you. Why do you say that? And what are leaders getting wrong?
Okay. So I'll just say one thing before I get into that. Two good questions. Number one, this book is not a motivational book. It's not there to motivate you. If you're looking for a rah book, don't even buy it. But if you're looking for a punch in the face that says, "Hey, wake up, because this is not happening," and you're open to that, then I think you'll enjoy the book. So the question is, what are leaders doing wrong? I call it a system issue. I say that, most cases, reps are pretty good. The first thing that leadership does when sales are not hitting is, oh my God, we need the sales force is not doing their job. They're not doing a good job. And my perspective is, well, the frontline sales leaders, are they out coaching the sales reps to be better? Because that's their job. And what their job really is, in reality, is they're rewarded for, not for coaching, and their coaching's never inspected. They're rewarded for being busy. They're rewarded for being responsive. They're rewarded for stepping in and saving deals. And the reality is, if I just say it, it's not their job. They were probably great reps, and there's nothing better than to save a deal. It feels great. Oh, I was always good at this, but it's not their job anymore. So I'll give you an example, Tobias. Number one, some leaders are great at responding to emails, responding to voice messages, and people say, oh my God, Stephen is amazing. He gets back to me right away. But at what cost? Your job is not busyness. Your job is growing your people to grow their sales. And, if you're jumping in on deals and you're not coaching them how to get better, well, the next time the same issue comes up, they're calling you again. So all of a sudden you're very busy doing busy work, not doing revenue generating work, or not moving the needle.
Why do you think this misconception is around? Like, why do you think organization probably still rewards managers for busyness rather than letting them do their job? Like, why is it so different from other functions where managers are allowed and encouraged to not step into the job of their, let's say, reporting team?
Well, I guess there's a couple things. And, as you said, we're quick to blame the reps when sales don't come in. And where the system breaks, I think, is the second line leadership. Okay. And this is, it's written for managers, but it's really written for people who lead those managers, because what they're doing is that they're calling, let's say there's an issue with the deal. Let me call my manager and see what's going on. And then all of a sudden, the manager who is supposed to be out coaching is busy answering his boss's questions, as opposed to saying, hey, Tony, let me get back to you on Friday. I have a coaching session today, and let me get back to you with an answer on this. So it's expectations that everything is immediate and it can wait, right? It can wait, or they can look in the system themselves, which may or may not be a good solution. So if we're busy, oh my God, Stephen got back to me. That's great. As opposed to the second line, what they should be doing is enforcing what is critical. And if they're not enforcing it, guess what? Managers will go where the shiny fish is, closing the deal, responding, as opposed to when they speak to their VP, how did it go with coaching with George this week? They're not inspecting what's critical. And in chapter 5, I talk about my 3 things. And we try to do too much as organizations. And then we the old expression, a jack of all trades, a master of none. Right? It translates as well, I'm sure, too, right?
Yeah, we have something kind of similar. So
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yes. So, but that's what happens. And I've always believed that the number 3 is important. That's been my factor for success, because every time I got promoted, I was never trained for the job. But what I did is I figured out the 3 things that my team had to do to be successful, and we did them well. And I'm a very simple guy. I follow some very simple formulas, but they work.
Another question building on this, that is really related to what you say about execution, that execution doesn't collapse all at once, but starts leaking and leaks and leaks and leaks. I want to know from you, and especially for the sales leaders listening to this episode, what does this look like inside a sales org, and what kind of signals can we detect to understand if our execution is leaking?
That's a good question. I haven't been asked that before. How I would look at it, execution is about doing the most important things really well, very similar to my 3 things. So if one, we're not inspecting execution, then we don't even know it's drifting or leaking. Right? And that's the thing. It's nothing that it's all of a sudden you've lost 10 sales. It's a slow burn, or it's a slow leak, right? So it's hard to identify. One of the keys to identifying it early is when we have accountability meetings and we're looking at how we're doing. We're inspecting how things are going. We're enforcing, if things are off, we're better to get them on track quickly than just to ignore them. And sometimes it's uncomfortable for the manager to point these things out. They're worried about their relationship with their rep. So the signs are, if the second line is not, if we're dropping coaching, if we agree, I think we agree that that's the most important activity managers can be doing, right? If they stop doing it and we don't know, that's a leak, and it's not going to affect sales immediately. Maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year. So the leak, and things could be going well. You could be hitting your numbers, but you're still leaking on execution, right? It's not an immediate impact, but it's slow. And then one quarter comes up and it's like, why do we miss, guys? Where's the misses? And the misses were 3 quarters ago when we stopped doing certain things that we have agreed that are critical for success.
So let's say that we start getting rid of pieces of the sales puzzles little by little, and then it comes up with a big mess because apparently we gave too much importance for to responsiveness or for being there, confusing busyness with the things that were actually real and effective and important of our job.
So what I talk about is busyness replaces leadership. Okay. And we think we're leading when we're busy, but we're not. And that's kind of a slap in the face because you know how many managers I speak to, Stephen, I am busy. I am overwhelmed. And the problem is, it's because you're being rewarded for doing many things that don't improve performance.
A question related to, let's go a little bit back on your book, okay? Because I think that the main concept, the main idea is clear to me. If you had to summarize in 3 basic sentences what a person can get out of your book after reading it, what would you say?
That's a great question. I should have like some cheat notes here, but it depends who you are. Okay, if you're a CRO, it's a wake up call that we're not inspecting or enforcing the right things to happen. Okay, if you're a sales manager, realizing that some of the things you're doing, because the system tells you to do them, are not going to put you on the podium this year. So it starts with understanding, describing, and putting a plan in place to do the 3 most important things. Now, I'm not telling anyone what they are. I believe their 3 things are coaching, accountability meetings, and execution. But they could be 3 other things. And I think if you pick 3 things and you stick to them and you do them really well and you spend a majority of your time on those, guess what? You're going to be successful. So if you're a sales leader, a senior sales leader, maybe you want to relook at your system and what we're rewarding and what we're doing and where we're spending time, because it's probably not working. If you're a manager, then you have to have the guts to say, hey, you know what, this is what they're asking of me, but I don't think it's the right thing to do. And I'm willing to do what I think is right, as opposed to maybe the things that people tell me to do. And sometimes the discomfort comes with 1, pointing them out, 2, saying no, or saying, I'll get to it when I get to it because I have something more important to do.
Building on this concept, I have a question related to forecast. Because in the book, you say that forecast erosion is a leadership signals, okay? So let's go back a little bit to the numbers that break, okay? So when these numbers become unreliable, what is really breaking underneath these numbers other than coaching, accountability, and execution?
Hold on. The answer is yes to all 3. Those are the ones that are missing. So I'm going to add one. I think that it's very insightful. What's missing is enforcement and inspection. Okay. So here's the thing that drives me crazy. When you ask managers, are you coaching? And I in the last few years, I started operating more in the SaaS world. Okay. And the SaaS world, when you ask managers, are you coaching? Yes, I'm coaching the deal. I don't consider that coaching. I consider that performance management. Now, whatever term we put on it doesn't matter. But what does matter is if you're not coaching the skills and the competencies to get the deal, you're not coaching. And that's where one of the biggest misses are. You say if it's not, coaching is key. And if you're not coaching, and if you're not out in the field observing, and maybe COVID changed the world in many ways, right? I used to use Skype to do calls. I don't want to do Skype, Stephen. I want to talk to you on the phone. And then COVID hit, and all of a sudden we're on Zoom all the time. And I'm fine with that. I can coach someone in Italy. I can coach someone in Czechoslovakia. I can coach someone in Toronto by doing this. Now, there is nothing, and I can't remember if I say it in the book or not. It doesn't matter. I believe it. There is nothing more important than being in the field coaching. So, for example, I use hockey, but let's say in Italy, football is the sport. How many of the football managers sit in the dressing room to coach while the game's going on? None. They're out in the field observing. And that to me is the most powerful form of coaching, is observing and asking questions. And if you're not doing that, you're not coaching.
Stephen, now that you brought up this,
I see a smile there. There's tacit agreement. I was
no,
laughing
because
at
now you brought up the SaaS industry, and I think that I work in the SaaS industry. I think it's a little bit of a disaster in terms of coaching compared to other industries. I have to be honest, compared to
Yes,
manufacturing, compared to pharmaceutical, compared to medtech.
yes.
But based on your observation and your experience, what do you think SaaS industry is lacking in terms of sales leadership to make their sales reps more effective and to be at least at the same level of other industries? Because, for example, my sister works in a medtech company. I've never seen a training program like that delivered in a SaaS organization. So, question: what went wrong?
Ah, you see, what went wrong is what went right. Okay, so let me explain what I'm trying to say here. Is SaaS has grown so quickly, right? It has. Companies have exploded, and part of what happens with that is you promote your best reps, right? And then you think, okay, this guy was a top rep, he's going to be a top manager. And because you're growing so quickly, there's no time to train. So you lack training for the job. The next level of leadership, and not to pick on SaaS, but that actually was an impetus for the book, to be honest with you. The next level of leadership is so busy changing jobs every year and a half, right? That there's never continuity. There's never a plan. It's all transactional. So all transactional, what I mean by that is it's focused on the quarter. It's not focused on growing your salespeople. Well, you can just fire them and hire a new one. It's not on development. So it's a very short-term game. The markets are looking at you. Are you not just selling now? Are you turning a profit? Oh, we can't spend on training. We can't focus on coaching. So again, it's not about coaching. It's about coaching the deal. Where's this deal? What's happening with this deal? And those are the questions that the senior level asks. Not how are you helping Stephen get better at selling. So where it broke is the focus is short-term and transactional. Leadership, to be honest with you, and hey, maybe they make more money by changing companies every year and a half, but the average tenure is not much different from what I'm describing. And how do you know how good a job you do if you're not in back to back to back? If you're not in for 3 years, any of your initiatives you never see to the end. And then you go to the next company and you start the same thing. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't have empirical evidence on that, but I have the Steve Rosen gut factor on that.
Yeah, and a little bit, let's say, a little bit of experience to
Yeah,
back this up.
and by your expression, because I always try to read the body language. I think you might agree with me in that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, and but that's what I see especially in the consulting work that I do. The last year has been pretty interesting. I've been hired by a few companies, strangely outside of the SaaS world compared to the previous years.
Yes.
Like now, 50% of my clients are not in the SaaS industry. And I've seen that, coming back to your book, they're way more focused. All the nuances that the SaaS industry built, all the big giant castle of cards and PDFs that we built is non-existent in other industries. And so that was a good answer.
So let me just jump on one other thing. You twigged something, and we haven't talked about it, but part of what I see is when pressure mounts And there's always pressure in SaaS, right? If you're working quarter to quarter, there's lots of pressure. And what I talk about, if it doesn't hold under pressure, it's not a priority. And what happens when pressure mounts in some industries is chaos rules. We're running around chasing our tails. So to me, the acid test for senior leadership is when the pressure mounts, when you're coming to the end of a quarter, which we just kind of hit the first quarter in March. If pressure hits, what do you do? And that's really what the book looks at, because that really shows you what the company's focus is.
Stephen, another question. Let's say that I'm a CRO or a sales leader listening to these episodes now, okay? I've been intrigued by your theories, your practical insights. I see a lot of execution drift in my operations because this conversation made me, open my eyes. Now, if I want to start fixing things from tomorrow, stop my execution drift, and try to, let's say, fix this leadership gap that is leading me to forecast erosion, where should I start and what kind of actions should I start doing?
That's a great question. Thank you. The first thing is read the book. See what insights you garnish there. And if that diagnoses the challenges that you're facing, because we probably, as a CRO, haven't looked as deeply at what the challenges are. Number one. Number two, my hope is that as the CRO, that if you buy into it, then have your team read the book, so everyone understands and is on the same page. Number three is start with your three things. Bring your team together and agree on what are the three things and what is everybody's role and what's important. Obviously, I have programs to help companies, one, diagnose where their challenges are, two, implement strategies and approaches that can alleviate many of the problems I discuss. But, and if you're buying it for your team, I offer some insightful guidelines and almost a book of 10 modules that I will give companies if they, buy 100 books. It's on my site to help them implement, because it's funny. You said you're a practitioner. I'm an old VP of sales. I'm not a theoretical guy. I'm a very practical guy. I do what I think works and live by that. So for me, it's nice my book's not theoretical. My approach is not theoretical. It's about implementation. And there's nothing more that I'd like is to help companies implement a system that helps them drive performance. So talk to me. I'm not going to charge you to talk to me, but talk to me and let's understand what challenges you're facing and come up with some solutions to solve them.
Thank you, Stephen. I think that we are almost at the end of our short but insightful conversation. I have one last, not a question, but a kind of final remark, okay?
Please.
Leave the audience with one sentence which will make them do their job in a way more focused way starting from tomorrow, please.
This has been sort of the best podcast that I've been on in terms of questions, and I've done many in the last little while, so thank you. The first thing that I did when I got into a new job, or I wanted to drive performance, is bring my team together and decide what are the three things that are going to drive performance. To me, that's a starting base. Okay, I think it's chapter 5 where I talk about the three things. It's not complicated, but it's essential. And then write them down and write how you're going to do them. And then build a system that enforces those things happening, that your managers are asking questions or coaching to the three things. And to me, that is the way to start. You can read about diagnosing the issues, but if you want to start, figure out your three things. And every client that I coach CROs, I coach VPs, and I coach sales managers. when I start, it's always about what are the 3 things we can do. So to me, that's a great starting base. And actually maybe ask, are you doing them right now?
Stephen, thank you so much for joining the show. I'm really happy you decided to have this conversation. For you listeners, you will, if you are subscribed to the newsletter, you will receive a few links to purchase, to buy Stephen books. But if you just clicked the link on LinkedIn, you find the link in the comments. Anyway, there are tons of ways to purchase this book. Stephen, last thing from you, your details, where can people reach out, when can drop you a message, an email, a call, whatever you want to share.
Okay. Well, number one, I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, as you are. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Stephen Rosen. I've got a website, starresults.com, 2 R's. My book is on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. If you're a CRO and you want to purchase for your team, come to my site. We have some special deals for companies that want to spread the word through their organization. And is there anywhere else to reach me? But those are website, or you can email me at steven@starresults.com. Very simple. And it's always a pleasure to speak to sales leaders. There's no cost to speak to me. And you get the honest goods. That's the one thing I can promise. I don't hold back.